Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Packet Protector, the podcast at the intersection of networking and security. I'm Jennifer JJ Vanilla with Drew Conry Murray, and it's our first episode of 2026.
Yay!
Yay! So we thought we would do a little roundtable and talk to some folks in the community about their security priorities and what they're concerned about for the year.
Yeah, our guests are Jimmy Taylor, he's a senior solutions engineer, and Marvin Martin, a network and cybersecurity practitioner. We're going to talk about, key risks they're looking at, the use case for enterprise browsers, concerns about code quality and bugs, using AI as a tool and dealing with AI risks, zero trust, why post-quantum concerns are low on their priority list, and more. So let's dive right in. So folks, thank you for joining us for this roundtable. It's always fun to hear from the community, and we are talking about security priorities in 2026. So let's kick it off with some of the key risks or issues you're looking to mitigate as we start the new year. And Marvin, we could start with you.
Sure, yeah. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. Really, where I'm working, and this is my opinions, and I'm speaking some from what we're headed to do, but this isn't speaking for my employer. We're really looking at basic stuff. Make sure the fundamentals are nailed down, audit logging, get the logs correlated, permissions auditing, more tightly scoped firewall rules and all of that, because you have the opportunity, to go buy a new shiny tool. But, we found sticking with the fundamentals first has been a solid way to go in the past, and really just going to nail that down in 2026.
What does it mean then to double down on? I mean, first of all, love that, because I feel like JJ, every time we do a news roundup, there's some company that's like, oh, we forgot to, change passwords or remove the default password from our firewall. Whoops. So
yeah. I need the listeners to know, I did not pay Marvin to say this. I had no clue that's what I was going to say. But 2 thumbs up, buddy. I'm totally on board with that. I love that answer.
Hey. Yep.
So what does it mean then to double down on those basics? What does that mean?
Well, it really is going to boil down to doing a bunch of difficult work, take, for example, egress firewall policies. If you're locking down what can leave your network, you can eliminate a whole bunch of, C2 activity and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But, then that's a labor-intensive exploration to get started with. What do I need to be able to leave my network, and not get in the way of the users. You don't want to do that, and so it'll take research pretty much and time.
But you feel like the organization is willing to give you the time and space to do that research and then take that time to figure out, to really do some deep traffic analysis, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I would say we're pretty comfortable with that. You're going to spend the money. You can spend the money on a tool, and the tool is still going to require implementation. And I'm happy to be at a company that values, first principles and knowing our stuff pretty low level. And so it's like, hey, let's invest in research and the time to get the basic stuff right.
I'm going to bust the bubble here, because usually it's Drew's job to bring out the AI phrase first in any podcast that we do, because I just like to stick my head in the sand like an ostrich when it comes to this. But that is a lot. I think people that have never managed, firewall policies, and have never tried to watch, and pick apart what's happening in traffic, even just coming out of one system that's doing some internet browsing, doesn't understand kind of the order of magnitude of what you're trying to sift through. What are you using some tooling or have you figured out how to do this yet? Or is this kind of like aspirational? It's on the roadmap. You're going to, in 2026, figure it out. Or do you already have some AI tools identified that might be beneficial?
Great question. So the AI thing, the short answer to that is no. And I would definitely put this more on the aspirational side of things. It will be a huge undertaking, and it definitely will be happening, if and when we get to it in segments, obviously not hammering everything at once. As to whether there be an AI tool that would do this type of thing, I'm absolutely sure it's out there. Probably many vendors want to sell you that. I'm open to it. I would have to do research on that front to see, what the best options would be there.
You also said robust audit logging, and I guess that in some ways could tie into AI. What does that mean? What makes it robust? How do you make it robust?
I mean, this is basic stuff for a number of organizations, but getting everything into a seam, and then getting actionable insights extracted from that, it would be what we're looking into there.
Okay, so a central repository, and then maybe writing some rules to help you kind of go through all that and figure out what do we need to be looking at, paying attention to.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Jimmy, priorities for you. I guess you're coming from the consulting side, so not sure how much you can say, but are there things you're thinking about for clients, or that clients are thinking about in terms of security priorities?
I think honestly, just probably I would echo what Marvin's been saying. I think you call it security vegetables, right? So
security vegetables, security push-ups.
Yeah.
Dang it, Jimmy! I was trying to beat that phrase out of Drew for the past 12 months, and now you resurrected it.
Total validation.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's I think what I've seen is I am starting to see organizations, security teams have more mature responses than I would say they did 5-10 years ago. There's a lot more awareness about, security controls like the CIS controls, the NIST controls. And so, with our organization, we tend to push forward with the CIS controls, CIS controls. And, if you take care of the first 5 or 6, like you're like 80% there with your security. And that's why it's why, eating your security vegetables is so good, because that is pretty much your security vegetables, in that first 6 controls or so. I've said it 3 times now.
It is unbelievable, like the number of news stories. And in fact, at the end of December, we did a news coverage and a wrap up. And what was it? It was a organization that provided software to financial companies, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not picking on them as one, but every month when we do news stories and there's some major breach, it's always one of those 101 level, right, eat your vegetable kind of things. That it's literally, had you been doing the first implementation tier of the CIS controls, you wouldn't have had that particular breach. Maybe another one, but not that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of risks, that was the second part of the question. And Jimmy, I'll start with you. What are some risks that you're thinking about, or that clients are thinking about moving into 2026?
Oh, man. So some top of mind ones that have come up is, they're kind of connected, is bugs and VPN concentrators on edge firewalls. So I've dealt with one vendor who had their VPN portal by some CVE that came out, and it was widespread. And I was dealing with the customer who got affected by this, and thankfully they just tested it, and they were able to see that that there was access, and that's what we could determine, but they didn't actually exfiltrate configurations. So so in this one particular vendor, their portal was exploited. You could take out a running configuration, and if you didn't have a master key set up properly, which I might be giving away the vendor by saying that, but you potentially had a bunch of credentials popped as well. And so these bugs, I think for me, what we've been talking about with clients is getting that VPN concentrator behind your edge firewall and not on it, because I don't need the edge to be compromised. If you compromise the VPN concentrator, so be it. But at least it's network segmentation. That's a big one. And then I think, data loss, especially in regards to data that's being used in a lot of these LLMs. It's making sure that, customer data or private data is not being put into these, especially these ones that are used by shadow IT. And then I think the other risk, though, is also trying to implement more zero trust. And I think zero trust is like an asymptote. It's something that we're approaching, but we won't ever get to, because at some point there's an infinite amount of things that we have to do, right, all the time. So those are, I think putting more identity, getting more identity into the mix, and interrogating, access to resources is probably, those are the things that I think are the risks and things that we need to be concerned about.
You mean incorporating identity as something to help build policy and controls around?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, for example, I mean, in our organization, we've moved now to completely it's SAML everything in our org. So you go to, I mean, our resources are even public. You can go to it on you don't have to be behind a VPN client because we are we're getting identity everywhere you go, everything that we interact with or that we're sharing. And so there's a lot of robust logging and information behind that. And I think that just increases our posture so much.
So one thing you said was bugs in software. Are you thinking specifically about, vulnerabilities in security products or just vulnerabilities across sort of the tech stack?
It's definitely vulnerabilities, but then it's also because, I'm a network security engineer, so to speak. So I'm focused on both the ops and the security side. And so it's also operational. I mean, just like there's just a lot more. It feels like to me, there's a lot more bugs that are affecting the performance of a lot of these appliances out there. So it's operational, but then in how that, but then also it's the vulnerabilities, how they can be exploited. In particular, I use the VPN concentrator as my example because it's not just one vendor. It's like all of them. They are all dealing with this. I mean, Fortinet now is I think they've deprecated or they've EOL'd their SSL client now.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's everyone is kind of like coming to terms with this.
Marvin, I see you in the video nodding.
Yeah. I mean, I would just echo the bugs in software thing that's not really anything new per se, but it feels like it's the urgency and it's just getting to be a louder chorus of bugs. But to me, what's most worrisome about just the increasing number of bugs is the shortened time to exploit. That seems to have really come down this year. And I don't see any indication that that's going to change. I expect that time to continue to shrink going into 2026. We'll see what happens, I suppose, but I don't feel real great about that.
Yeah. And I'm curious, as purchasers of these products, you do have maybe a little bit of a voice or influence. Have you spoken to your vendors about frustrations around bugs, and are you pushing them on it? Because I know, like in the Packet Pushers community Slack, it feels like every day there's a long thread about like, this is such a why is this happening? So what can we do about it? We as the purchasers and users of these products.
In our case, we use lots of open source, so we're depending a fair bit on open source community to take care of and fix things, and that's usually very, very good. So I'm as far as like vendors to go chase down. I don't have exact like corporate vendors in mind at the moment, since we're focused mostly on open source in our case.
In my case, absolutely, yeah. There's we're definitely complaining about that all the time. So, I mean, but at some point, when does that just become noise? And, it's not signal anymore, because for them, they're like, yeah, we got bugs. I mean, and you continue to buy it, right? So,
How has it been received? Do you feel like they're listening? Do you feel like they're going, yeah, whatever? Do they just not care? The ones that you've spoken to?
Depends on the customer, to be honest. How much are they spending? The smaller customers, not as much, If you've ever complained about a Microsoft product and got some kind of action there, let me know. Because I've never heard anybody who complained to Microsoft and actually got some action on anything. And they're easy to pick on, right? Because everybody uses Microsoft in some capacity. Yeah. And so everyone has that. Although I think Microsoft is starting to move some of their model to more local contractors, some of their support and stuff, and some of that. So some of that's helping. But others that aren't Microsoft, I think when the customer complains enough, they're starting to get some attention on that. But some vendors don't have this problem as much too. So and that's becoming a differentiator, I think. Um, you know, Arista has a pretty good reputation about having super stable code. So, there are those out there who are trying to improve this. But then I also worry about, vibe coding and if, what kind of vibe coding might be happening at these places.
Marvin, one of the things you listed in your risks is supply chain. Can you, what's on your mind for that?
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's in the open source side of things, as robust as I feel open source software that's well maintained tends to be, secure and check those boxes. Just by nature of being open source, depending how the contributors are managed or not managed. I mean, the XZ SSH backdoor there from 2024, that was a scary one. And, I think everyone is thankful that got caught so early. And then, of course, the mind kind of wonders, well, let's see, that was one thing that got caught. I wonder just how many more there might be lurking around out there.
Yeah, for sure.
And we've seen, so we've talked to, well, I guess, so throughout all the various news stories, some of what has bubbled up and rolled over from month to month is, the open source community and doing some human validation of, commits and changes. But we've also talked to, I think it was, Chuck at Pendo. We've talked to some folks who are able to leverage AI in meaningful ways to catch that. So like there was, they're using AI in various ways. Somebody else that I talked to, actually, their tooling caught some malicious code rolled out in a open source script that they had, before they rolled it into any of their code. So I'm curious your thoughts about oh God, Drew, another AI.
We're like
where
15 minutes in and you've already said AI twice, JJ.
Did you drink your AI Kool-Aid this morning or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I need more coffee or something. But yeah, Marvin, especially because you guys are using so much open source, are you heading down that path yet? Is that kind of future looking?
That's a very interesting question. We aren't doing it ourselves, but I would definitely be curious to hear more about that. And if folks are doing, especially like project maintainers, if they're implementing something like that to monitor contributions, that sounds fantastic. And I would just, put in a plea that that process be as open as the open source code itself. I think, let's just say, what if, for example, the Debian Linux community, what if they developed an open framework that would evaluate, the contributions of code that are going into the key Debian packages? That would be really interesting. So, yeah, if you have more resources on that or papers or something, I'd love to hear more about that.
Okay, an opportunity for listeners to hit us with a follow-up, packetpushers.net/follow-up. Which also brings to mind something we've talked about a few times in 2025, JJ's, was SBOMs, or software bills of material. I don't know if that's something you guys are thinking about. It might be a little more difficult on the open source side, depending on the size and maturity of the product, to be like, and in addition to this free software, I want a really comprehensive, inventory of what's inside it. Like, I don't know if you can actually ask for that. But are SBOMs on something that you're thinking about or hearing about?
Definitely hearing about. It's something I've looked at off and on along the way, and to some degree, it looks like it should be doable in open source because, well, open. But on the other hand, the issue generally comes down to so many other things in open source is who's taking care of the maintainers, and it feels just a little wrong to have, a company come banging over a single maintainer project and saying, where is your software bill of materials, and so that's been a long tension in open source, I would say, overall. But I do think there's some significant possibilities there, and I think, I'm not sure if it's the Linux Foundation, I think it might be an arm of the Linux Foundation is doing something about secure open source, but I have to go dig that information up.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of what Natalie said when we had her on not long ago about at the end of the year about, like SBOMs. I think she had a really grounded take on I loved hearing from her because I think SBOMs are like, I'm abstracted from that. That's not a space that I live in. And so, she really dug into what does that look like operationally? What does that look like? What do you do? What is it a file? Where does it get put? Who makes it? So I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, I mean, when we talked about open source with her, it was kind of like, look, you're lucky to be getting anything from these people. They're it's by the grace of their free time that they probably don't have, are they even building this for you? And there's been some hubbub in the news recently about, I can't remember if it was Facebook or Google's, some large company is leveraging some of their own AI tools for doing some open source scanning, and they're kind of just hammering on these sometimes very small individual contributors who have little tiny pieces of code, without offering any specific suggestions other than, hey, you suck at life, fix your stuff. And so there's a lot of conversation around, that's really not the way to support the community. Do a little bit better, be a little bit more helpful, or go after somebody who has the resources to fix that code.
Yeah, I think that was the Google and FFmpeg debate that kind of blew up
that
there.
was one of them for sure.
And I know, I know
Go ahead.
GitHub. I know GitHub does some. I know GitHub does some kind of dependency scanning, right? And they're also doing. And I think they have some advanced security tools to also kind of check into these SBOMs. Is that right?
I'm not familiar with their tooling specifically, but it's well possible.
I don't remember if it was GitHub, but I remember there was some, I think, open source developer community that was trying to implement more of an ongoing sort of SBOM-like capability, but what it was is escaping my memory. But on the commercial side, Jimmy, with people buying commercial products, are you talking about or hearing about interest in SBOMs?
Not really. Not in the places, not in the clients that I've worked with. At my previous employer, which was kind of like finance tech, absolutely. Like intense auditing, like so much auditing. Yeah, so much. Like, yeah. I mean, thankfully I started creating templates, right, of responses, because it was just like, this is getting annoying. So yeah.
And there's the tension we live in. I think going back to Marvin's initial thing about, doing the basics right, is that sometimes doing the basics is annoying.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, and sometimes too much security really creates inconvenience, that's always the tug, right? Is how much security are you going to implement, and then how much backlash are you going to take?
Yeah. So what about security priorities? Do you feel like going into 2026 they're different from last year? Have they changed? If so, yes. Well, if so, why? If not, why not?
I think for me, it seems like and maybe it's just because I'm paying a little more attention to the security news and that kind of thing. But I do feel like the noise, the volume of the cries from security issues has gone up. So that has sort of raised the level of urgency for improved security. And so in that regard, you might say that security priorities are increasing and going up in 2026. I don't know if I could put a really fine point on it, but that's just the general impression I'm getting.
I would say I had to give Marvin time so I could think. I would say the priority change I would see is more emphasis on LLM usage, and just customers, clients worried about data leakage.
So that's a new thing going into 2026. Customers are worried about, am I going to expose or lose sensitive data through the use of through my own employees using LLMs?
I would say so. Yeah. Proprietary information, IP, anything like that.
Well, and especially as we've seen them, the kind of AI enabled browsers where I don't know, my personal opinion is they're kind of helping a little bit too much. And that's a hard no for me personally. I don't want anything involved in my life quite that much. but it's hard to know who's using what, who's doing what, who's putting what information where. Yeah, the whole browser situation I think is a little crazy.
Yeah, I use Comet Perplexity's enterprise browser, but I don't use it for browsing per se, because I just haven't quite found the workflow of that AI agent to be, seamless or like helpful yet. I use it more just as as a as an app to do my Perplexity search and research and so forth. But I've used it in other places. I've tried it out with Gemini, mixed results. But this is just my very cursory experience with some of these tools, because I still just stick to, and it feels weird saying I'm like old school AI, but I'm just like, I just use LLM, right? Like I'm just going into the search and just typing it in and then, refining that and so forth when I'm doing that kind of work. Although Perplexity, I do like the sources, and I do like that it really cites what it's doing and gives you more context. I think that's one of the advantages of that one. Not that I'm a sponsor of Perplexity.
I would second the comments there on LLMs. Maybe we've been slow to adopt those kinds of things, in part for some of those reasons. Data leakage and that kind of thing. So there's possible something to be explored, and maybe running our own local models. Expect we'll be looking into some of that, and that again, it does revolve around the security aspect of things. And on the browsers note, we just found out the other day that Microsoft Edge has this new AI text prediction feature. And if you're typing in a text box online, chances are pretty good those keystrokes are all going to Microsoft. So it's like, yet another level of helpful, in quotes, intrusion. And that I can't believe they just turned that on. I think without direct consent. It's probably consent buried somewhere in some little bundle of helpful features, that everyone's just going to default to click on. But
one of those 80 pages of fine print somewhere.
Well, probably.
Drew, what was it they did several months ago and they had to roll back out of, where they were going to take screenshots like of the whole screen and analyze that so that you could kind of rewind through your day and look. It was just completely freaking ridiculous. I can't remember what they called it. Do you guys remember?
It was a Windows tool.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Recall.
Yeah.
Windows
Recall. That was it.
Windows
Yeah. So they kind of just like auto enabled that, or were going to, for everybody. And I think the whole world was like, what the crap are you doing here, Microsoft? And they rolled back out of that. So this could be something similar where, everybody's going to kind of rise up in arms and say, look, we don't want you automatically doing this. Or it's just the world that we live in. I mean, it's kind of frustrating that so many of these tools, when you accept the terms of use, you're just kind of giving away your life and your firstborn child.
I think there's like a work profile mode for Edge. I do not know if you can control a little bit more of that in the Edge work profile, but yeah, just be warned, if you're using Microsoft Edge, the text prediction might not be your friend.
I mean, we are talking about the same company, though, that included Xbox gaming on an enterprise, ISO for desktop deployments. So why in the world do we need Xbox gaming in an enterprise?
But at least in Intune, there's now an easy way to turn that back off. So you can all of the settings to undo the settings that they should have never done in the first place. Yeah, I'm with you.
Man, back in my desktop engineering days, I remember having to build these PowerShell scripts to, remove all this crap from Windows 10, decrapify it. So,
I mean, it seems like all of these tools are being, thrown at us regardless of the platform you're on. We're at Packet Pushers, we use Google, and I can't do a thing in Google without a pop-up about, do I want Gemini to help me? And most of the time I don't. So yeah. And then same thing with Zoom. We're recording on Zoom. Zoom's like, hey, our AI companion can help you. And I'm like, no, it can't. But it's all clicky. And trying to control that across an entire organization, it's just getting harder and harder. I think this, Jimmy, you suggested the topic of enterprise browser. So, and we're in it. So let's keep going. First of all, what do you mean by enterprise browsers? Because I think of one thing, but I want to know what you're thinking about.
Yeah. So when I say enterprise browser, first thing is it's not RBI. It's not a remote browser isolation where they're basically just pixel streaming to your device. It's not that. It's typically a thick client that is inspecting at the browser level the DOM content and what you are going to display, and then what your actions are within that browser. So the common one is copy and pasting. It keeps you from copying and pasting data outside of the browser. It can add watermarks. I mean, a whole bunch of features. The common ones out there are going to be like Island, Prisma browser, aka Prisma Access browser, aka Talon, and I think Netscope has one now. Has an enterprise browser solution. Microsoft.
So you're talking about a category of browser that are purpose-built with additional security controls that
yes,
an organization can control, as opposed to Firefox, Chrome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking web filtering, ZTP or ZTNA for certain services, DLP, threat prevention. Like, it's all in there, and so it's pretty much, in my mind, it's a solution to organizations that find it impossible almost to do SSL decryption, because the management overhead that you have is just insane with SSL decryption.
So rather than trying to do the policy enforcement after you've decrypted traffic, either at like a firewall edge or in the cloud somewhere, you try to do it at the browser before it gets encrypted? Okay.
Yep. Absolutely.
And Edge has its version. I mean, we're picking on Microsoft here, but they do have their version of a Edge for Business enterprise browser as well.
And I believe Google has one as well, but it's not going to be as security focused as like Island or Prisma will be.
Are you hearing? I feel like this approach has been tried many times in the past and never gets much traction. What are you here? Is this something you're hearing about more interest from clients about, or are you just curious about what other people are hearing? Yeah,
absolutely. A lot more interest. I'd say interest, but then also, because it's really what is it? 80 and 90% of the traffic is encrypted. So, what visibility do you have from a security perspective? And these are applications that you can give to a contractor and limit their access. You can contain them and what they're doing within that. And they have other things too, like, I think you can do SSH within these. Some of them will connect up well to do some kind of like remote application, kind of like a remote desktop manager, but you're streaming an application instead. Similar thing. I guess that's like ZTNA, right? In some regards. So there's just a lot of security that you can just do and contain and really kind of lock things down, but still give users a decent experience. You can get super granular too. And you can say, like, I don't want to allow copying from Salesforce into Google Docs. You can get that granular with these tools.
What are some of the kind of hiccups or gotchas with the enterprise browsers?
I would say
so far.
The only thing that I can think of right now is sometimes they may ding me on this if I say this, but sometimes I wonder if resource utilization, because if you're doing a lot of inspection, how much is happening at the local level, And I wonder, because like it's doing like all this inspection, but maybe they have it super efficient. I'm not sure, but like, I think about like I was running a Hamina session, doing some wireless planning, and holy cow, my thing started like revving up, getting really hot, and I'm like, what's going on? Now, granted, it could have been something stupid I was doing because there was some new Hamina toy I was playing with, and it could have been me, but like, I think about those things. What kind of, and then in this age where we're starting to get cramped with like with memory costs, and clients are who knows where that's going to go? How much endpoints are going to increase in cost as RAM starts getting more expensive? I don't know. It's just I think that's something to consider. Also, too, I think sometimes depending on your team, if you're not working with security on this, because sometimes like security teams and network engineers are at odds, or they don't. Sometimes they're not collaborating. So sometimes in these tools, it's hard to, I would say, sometimes troubleshoot without some kind of good like digital experience tool involved, because I don't
Meaning
know
if
how.
a user runs into some kind of block, they think, oh, the network has messed up, and they send a ticket, and then the network engineers are like, it's fine. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yep, exactly. And they're like, I don't know, but people are going to think it's the network. I mean, they always do. So, those are the kind of things that I think about that are the kind of the trade-offs right now. But also too, who knows? I mean, this is pretty cool stuff that's happening. So maybe cost, that might be something down the road.
Mm-hmm. Have you worked with clients who've used this? Because the thing I think about is, are the end users actually going to adopt it? Does it give them the work experience they're used to? And if not, then they tend to push back or find workarounds.
Yeah, they do. It tends to, but my previous employer has deployed it fully now.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I interact with a Palo employee, they're always using it. Like every window they're using is a Prisma browser. It seems like it's gaining some traction, I'll say. And I think that this is something in 2026 that maybe might gain some more traction, because previous place, financial tech, I mean, it's perfect for them, because they're like, everything is a SaaS application, so they can keep, they can just keep their workflows within Windows. And then they also have extensions to help migrate people. So you'll install the browser, but then you can install an extension in like Chrome, and it can still provide some degree of protection in Chrome. But then it can also do like a redirect and get you to open up in Prisma browser, for example.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, maybe that is something we should be keeping an eye on, JJ, for 2026. Marvin, have you run into enterprise browsers, or what is your take?
I've definitely heard of them. It's not something we're using at the moment, in part because where I work, we actually do TOS inspection pretty much on almost all web traffic. That's one of our specialties we have expertise in. But one thing I can really see them being beneficial for is controlling the extensions that get in, people install to their browsers. And I feel like there would be a lot more ability to control what extensions get installed, not some rando, oh, you need to install this extension to view this web page scam type of things. And also, another big one that seems to have popped up here this year has been extensions that have been solid, good, trustworthy for years, getting hijacked or sold or something else. That ownership change is not necessarily visible to end users. And so, you have all these trusted extensions going rogue. And I can definitely see a case where an enterprise browser might give you a much stronger position in, containing or preventing that from even being an issue.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I mean, there's stuff we can do through whether it's GPO or Intune, but it's just not. It's not easy. It's messy. It's kind of allow listing extensions in a very unintuitive sort of a way. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for enterprise browsers. I would love to do an episode on that and kind of dig into, because there are different methods that these different products work, like what's going on under the hood, and functionally, what are they doing? What are the benefits? What are the limitations? I think that's a fantastic topic coming up for us, Drew.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, I think that maybe they did their research with enterprise browsers with Chromebooks in K-12, because in this environment, it's a whole other market. It's a whole other market, and Chromebooks are it's pretty much just a browser that's running on top of Gentoo, and within that is just a browser. And they do a bunch of interesting things like there was I remember in K-12, there was a company called GoGuardian, and they basically could do complete content inspection for students and block what you couldn't do on a firewall, because they had all their other pieces involved in the browser, it's just super interesting. So I kind of wonder if that research was done back then, and then it kind of what we're seeing now with enterprise browsers is an evolution of that. Because you'll notice they're all Chrome. None of them are running their own, what's
They're
the
built off of
Firefox
Chromium,
engine?
right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So you were talking about some graceful ways to do some things in enterprise browsers that the firewall couldn't do or couldn't do well, especially with some of the Chromebook stuff. Can we talk about like what's going on in the world of, firewalls, next gen firewalls, Gen Z firewalls, Drew?
That's from Jimmy. He said, what's the Gen Z firewall? What's the hip, new, fresh firewall?
Yeah, are we
Well-
into the millennials? I don't even know what's happening here, Jimmy.
You know what's the new term now, right? I mean, it's like we have next gen firewalls, but how long have they been next gen? Like since
Like
2010,
20 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's been a
yeah.
while.
I think we're beyond that point, and I think even Gartner has a different, category now. They call them like enterprise firewalls or something like that now, or something to that effect. So, but I'm like, look at the feature set. What was in next generation firewall, right? It was built in, pretty much built in IDP and URL inspection, DNS security, yada yada. There's some of these things, and so, but those feel like all kind of like table stakes now for like every firewall. I mean, I can look at an SRX, Fortinet, a Versa, Cisco, a Firepower, or no, it's a secure firewall now, and Palo, and now even some of the SD-WAN appliances are implementing this stuff. SSRs from Juniper are implementing a lot of these. Prisma SD-WAN is about to implement some of these pretty soon with the latest code release. So, I just feel like that's not special anymore. I just don't. I feel like if you're not doing those things, then you're just you're just a really fancy stateful firewall, and so what is next? What is that? And it's like, I don't know. Is there a Gen Z of firewalls? Like, what is the next approach happening? I mean, part of me thinks that maybe it's actually, it's where's the pendulum swinging in terms of processing, and maybe right now that's maybe that's swinging more towards the clients with the enterprise browsers, and a lot more emphasis on ZTNA from like Zscaler and or SASE, right, from Palo. So what is that? And I was just kind of wondering, like, does anybody have any thoughts on that? I don't know, because I'm like, to me, the differentiators now is like, how stable is your code? How good is your SaaS management? Because I care about that more. I want companies to own their coding problems, and that's why I like SaaS solutions. I want them to own it. I don't want to have an appliance that I have to patch, and then it goes wrong. Something borked, and it's nothing I can do, and I'm going to waste how many hours troubleshooting something when in reality it's just a bug. And some of these vendors don't even publish all their bugs, right? Because they've got public bugs, but then they have all their private bugs that they keep under lock and key. So, and I don't know which one it's going to be. So I want them to own it, and I want to manage firewalls at scale with something that they have to make sure runs well. So I think those maybe are the differentiators going forward. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
I think there would be an opportunity for the firewall vendors to, what you're saying, definitely embrace their connection with the industry. It feels like we had big firewall vendor and then users over here, somewhere else. And, if, let's just say, for example, what if the firewall vendors would take security problems and code problems as seriously as Cloudflare does on their outage reports. Cloudflare has a hiccup. You get within a very quick time frame relative to the rest of the industry, you get a very detailed write-up. What went wrong, what we're doing about it, how we're going to try to prevent this in the future. And they've embraced that. way of operating. And I think if a firewall vendor is looking for a new priority in 2026, just latch on to that way of operating. And it might take 2 or 3 years, but you'll earn a reputation if you genuinely take that position. You'll earn a reputation that's is going to stick a little better than just marketing more AI features or something like that.
So you're saying you want to see faster, more responsive sort of reporting on bugs and vulnerabilities?
Well, I'm saying, someone in the company step up and take ownership and say, "Hey, I'm going to personally say, we're going to fix these problems."
Mm-hmm.
But hey, and I'm sure there's legal implications to sticking out like that. So I know there's a fat chance of this happening.
Well, we did talk to Omar Santos. Oh God, a few months ago, in 2025, who for, I don't know, 20 some years ran PCERT at Cisco, and now he's kind of leading some of their AI strategy there. And it was interesting, kind of hearing him from the vendor perspective of their mission, and something he has been outspoken about, because I've actually known him for a long time. He's local to me, and he's very outspoken about disclose early, disclose often, even if we don't know the cause, even if we don't know the full implications of something, we're going to just get it out there as quickly as we can and work with the customers through that. And I know there's some exceptions to that when there's different agencies involved, but I do love that approach. I do, we've seen, actually I quoted, it was actually on who was it? I was listening to a Risky Biz podcast, and one of their, their vendor sponsor interviews was, talking about, just let me know as a vendor, as a company, let me know your perspective about the technology, how you're approaching it, and how the customer should be thinking about your solution in their environment, and what risk, because every product that you add, right, introduces some type of feature, but it also introduces some type of risk, whether it's some direct supply chain risk or something else. And I think this whole idea of transparency, there's several vendors right now that have multiple, not only vulnerabilities but KEVs kind of layered on top of each other, that are, to me, firewall and internet and security vendors. I'm not going to pick on any one of them because there's a few. I'm disappointed because I've known product managers in that manufacturer for a long time. They've historically had a pretty good record of dealing with these things. And I feel like something has happened in the past, I don't know, 18, 24, 30 months or so, where we just have this rash of completely avoidable bugs. Some of them a little not, right? Some of them not, but a lot of them have been completely avoidable just through good, hygiene and code and product management. So yeah, I would love to see that as well. And I kind of think, Jimmy, you were talking about some of the zero trust and ZTNA and SASE, and I kind of think of some of the firewalls as being like a zero trust enabled, fill in the blank, a zero trust enabled firewall that can, have other context or integrate more. And I think, I'm curious, actually, I'm gonna take a little bit of a side quest here and ask you about this. I think as Drew and I have talked to a lot of, vendors and implementers in the space, a lot of other parts of the industry, especially around like cloud and virtualization, there's some standardization in what they do. There's APIs, there's interoperability. But on the networking side, which is where I came from, I feel like there's still a lot of, whether it's Palo or it's Cisco or fill in the blank or Juniper, right? We want you to buy our stuff. And we're not going to make it easy for you to integrate with everything else. And the problem is, when we're talking about zero trust architectures, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot, because you can't do one vendor. Sorry, all of you vendors that want to sell all of your everything. Sometimes you can't do soup to nuts that vendor all the way through. And even if you do, a lot of times they're different products that are kind of like duct taped together in a messy sort of a way. So, my personal soapbox with this is, I feel like we've got to do better in infrastructure, especially in networking infrastructure, firewalls, et cetera, in being more open, being more transparent, and doing more about interoperability. And I think those things kind of go together.
Yeah, I agree. I have liked how some vendors have been open in that regard with that interoperability. Well, and also to exposing their documentation and allowing us to see it and not have certain things hidden behind a registration or whatever. I mean, because I think that also makes it easier for for some of our LLM tools to also scan. I think there is some benefit to that. Like, I've solved some like really complicated problems due to documentation being scattered across the place. But I could use an LLM to kind of compile that, and then that helped me. If you're keeping that behind a registration wall, I can't do that. And then I got to rely on your LLM, which I will say my LLM is performing better than documentation LLMs by some of these vendors right now. And, like, it's just, I'm getting that data better. So, and like API openness too, allowing open access to understand what your APIs are. I know some people know me as a Juniper Mist fanboy, but like their API is pretty slick and they have some cool stuff that, because it's open, and they even have some stuff that you can do that you can't do in the GUI, but it's there in the API. And so it's, it's right there. And I can integrate certain, items, logs, I can get certain details and I can easily search that because their API is open. So yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that. And the transparency thing too, I just wanted to, I feel like what Fortinet actually sometimes I think gets a really bad, I get some slack for a lot of their CVEs. And then I had to do some research in it myself, of course, but I've noticed that, and I was also I had a presentation from because I've asked some Fortinet SEs about this because I'm like, dude, you guys have CVEs all the time. What's going on? Well, their point is, well, take a look. 80 to 80-something% of our CVEs are internally reported. Like, and so how many from other vendors are reporting their CVEs? Are self-reported that they're finding. And I find it interesting that most of their stuff is self-reported and they're just open about that. Now, that could be vendor speak, right? But, it's at least an attempt and people saying, hey, we're trying to be open about these things.
I do, in some ways, sympathize with vendors because if you're releasing a lot of CVEs, on the one hand, you are being open. On the other hand, you are going to take some flack for it. Because as they mount, it's just going to become a story about you that you are the vulnerable software company, which is not a great look. So they are kind of between a rock and a hard place. I'll also say on Network Break, we do a segment called Red Alert where we talk about something a vulnerability folks should be paying attention to. For our last show of the year, instead of a Red Alert, we one of our co-hosts put together the top 5. Vendors with vulnerabilities in the KEV catalog, the known exploitable vulnerability catalog. And number 1 was Cisco. And I think second and third were Google and Apple. So it wasn't the usual suspects. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Well, on the other hand, I'm just going to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Yes.
You're talking about vendors that have the most, the broadest portfolio, especially with like Cisco and penetration. So
True.
There's just volume, right? There's going to be some correlation to volume and all of that. But
which, going back to your point, Jimmy, when you mentioned Arista as having, I do think they have a well-deserved reputation for, good software quality, but they are also not in the same threat environment that a Cisco is or a Fortinet is, which
for sure,
is going to work in their favor in some way in terms of, and also not the market share. So it's all complicated.
Go
ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you're a VeloCloud customer, you got to feel very good right now that you're in Arista's hands. I'm just gonna say.
Marvin, we've been talking about, JJ was saying we need better integration from security vendors. You being in the open source world are essentially the integrator. What does that look like?
Sure. Well, I think there's some action in the space in the networking side of things, definitely being corralled together by like the Autocon forum. I think that's exciting. I'm happy to see that happening. I don't know if there's necessarily a corollary to things happening in the security tooling space. That's definitely an interesting question, and I'm not sure I have a ton of insight on that particular detail.
But yeah, I appreciate you mentioning AutoCon. For folks who aren't aware of the Network Automation Forum, it is an organization dedicated to advancing the state of the art in network automation. And of course, that also carries over into security because of that intersection between security and networking. So check out networkautomation.forum. They put on 2 really good conferences every year. Let's get a little bit further out. JJ, we've talked about quantum and post-quantum encryption. Are you guys looking at supporting PQE algorithms in the new year? Is that on your radar?
It's something we're taking a look at, and sort of like where can we support it in our infrastructure, and because it's going to be a relatively easy thing to enable, then yeah, we'll probably proceed. I don't really feel at the moment like there's. I think that the possible quantum threat is coming. I'm not losing sleep over it yet, and so I think we'll probably be heading that direction as it becomes available, especially in the open source world. It's gaining traction there, like in SSH and stuff. As there's early support for those kinds of things, so we'll probably get to a point where we turn that on. But in the grand scheme of things, we're post quantum protocols or encryption is still relatively new, and the threat it's designed to protect against is still relatively new. And so it is kind of really heading out into some uncharted territory long term. I guess we'll see what happens. Will these algorithms actually protect against the perceived threat, or will the perceived threat ever develop? There's still lots of questions.
I think for me, outside of the marketing speak, no, nobody's really, talking about it. I mean, it does feel kind of like a new trend in tech. I mean, that each vendor is kind of applying to themselves. But then I understand the threat model, right? Store and decrypt later, kind of approach. But I mean, are they not storing already what we're doing, right? I mean, and if they're going to get my secrets, I mean, is my secrets from 2025 going to be different than 2026? I mean, and I haven't implemented it yet. So it kind of feels like, and I'm not trying to be flippant about it. It's just like, it's a risk tolerance that I'm like, it feels like a real low risk in most clients I work with. I mean, but I would say if we go down that road though, I mean, what kind of resource utilization increase are we talking about with servers if we start using PQC? Is it gonna, are we talking 10% increase in resource because of, larger key sizes or different keys that are being used, or is it up to 50%? I don't, what does that look like? Staring at my notes. So, like, I don't know. Because like, it's a complicated thing for me. It's like, it's being proactive. And when in tech are we really that proactive about, especially theoretical problems that are not tangible? I mean, like, how do you develop a theory of mind to solve this problem? I don't know, right? Like,
we need more FUD.
Yeah, it's what it kind of feels like to me. I mean, it does, and it does feel like FUD a little bit, but I know it is, right? And it makes me wonder. Well, okay, are we going to just start having more closed networks? Is the internet going to start becoming more closed? Because if this is a possibility and anybody can decrypt anything in the future, like, are we going to start? I mean, we're already closing off, right? In some sense, internationally. So, so I don't know. Has me thinking about that.
I guess the short answer I'm getting from both of you is not really a priority for 26.
Yeah, I'd say so for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of the majority of our listeners feeling the same way, given the list of priorities we've talked about.
I mean, I think agentic AI, malicious agentic AI, is way more of a threat than PQC, or when then worrying about implementing PQC right now.
Yeah, it definitely feels more immediate. It's at our door, basically.
Do you mean the risks that agentic AI will introduce to an organization, or the use of agentic AI as a tool for attacking?
Oh, absolutely a tool. So like Anthropic just, had a post like a month ago or so talking about this in action and how they were kind of involved in helping thwart this. I think Tenable was involved or something like that. I can put a link. I can give you a link to it. But it was actually used, and it wasn't like, it wasn't perfect, but it's it's getting there. I mean, and I've seen how well these things are used. I've talked to colleagues in some of these larger organizations that are involved in like delivery services, and how they're using agentic AI, and what they're able to do with complex things with coding and reading APIs and trying to normalize the inputs and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're able to do with that, I mean, I can see agentic metasploit. I don't see why that's not a possibility.
Uh-huh. Okay. Marvin, thoughts there?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely rank concerns about weaponized AI as a tool over post quantum decryption concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, guys, thank you for raising your hands to do this roundtable with us. It was a lot of fun, and appreciate the time you gave us and the insights you gave us. If folks want to find you online, are you available? Do you blog? Do you have a podcast? Do you have a SoundCloud or whatever that you want to talk about? What are you up to, Jimmy?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I have a technical blog called commitconfirm.com. Got some stuff there, but it's kind of just esoteric, like weird problems I've come across, and I'm like, I want to contribute back to the community. So that's what that is.
Nice. Okay. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. Marvin?
Just LinkedIn. I don't have a cool blog name like Jimmy's there. That's pretty neat. Commit confirm. I can get on board with that.
Something to think about for 2026, Marvin.
Hey, there we go. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us, for being here for this episode. And thanks to you for being with us for another episode of Packet Protector. If there's a topic you want us to cover, if you have a comment or correction or question on anything you heard on today's episode or any future episode, reach out at packetpushers.net/FU. The FU is for follow-up. And we really do love when listeners reach out. And just to let you know, Packet Protector is part of the bigger Packet Pushers podcast network. That network includes many, many technical podcasts for your professional development. We cover networking, security, IPv6, DevOps, and more. We have an industry blog, 2 weekly newsletters, a community Slack group, a YouTube channel, an IRC group, and we have a store, store.packetpushers.net. Find it all at packetpushers.net. Always free with no login required. Thanks for listening.